Hi. So I learned a very valuable lesson today, and that is to make sure you hit the record button before talking for 20 minutes. So, hello, my name is Daniel. This is my BookTube channel. Today I only have a few updates for you as far as what I've been reading lately. So this will probably be a pretty quick one, but I'm excited because I made a purchase, and that purchase has really helped me in my ancillary reading. But we'll get to that in a minute. I do want to update that I have finished the 8th book in my Read What You Own challenge. The Read What You Own challenge is a challenge a bunch of booktubers are doing, and some subscribers as well, where we try to read a certain number of books before we purchase anything new. And I have a lot of books, so I have decided to do the 100 book challenge for my Read What You Own. So I'm about 10% there almost. I've really not felt the need to buy anything lately, book related. So it's actually been pretty easy, and I've been pacing myself. I haven't been just picking a bunch of small books to get the project out of the way. I'm just going to savor my time and enjoy the change in lifestyle, because oftentimes I would just be going to bookstores and, every week, sometimes up to 3 times a week, just going to different bookstores and hunting. The hunting process is fun, but I have so much here and not shown, but just throughout the house that I mean to read, haven't gotten to yet, so might as well save myself some money right now. But as I said, this week I have finished the 8th book in the Read What You Own challenge, and that is the first book in the Amber Chronicles. That is called Nine Princes in Amber. Excuse me. This is by Roger Zelazny. This is like a 2-in-1 volume that I found in a thrift store. But we also have like this big book of Amber, which is like 10 books into one big codex that I'm going to go through this year. I got onto this series mainly because Michael K. Vaughan has decided that throughout January, and I think now extending past January, he's going to read the entire big book of Amber. And I'm like, oh, well, I will join in a little bit. I've had the volume for ages, and I wanted to read these stories. So I think I'm going to pace myself and just do maybe one of the Amber books a month. One of the Amber books a month. And I'm just going to, pick through it slowly. Like, this book, it was good, and I enjoyed the first story, but it was by far not a complete story. So this was meant to be a series, and the first 5 books feature one particular character, Corwin, I think his name is. Sorry, I finished it a few days ago, and that just went right out of my mind. But this character woke up in a hospital, and he was being pumped full of drugs, and he sort of got like a malevolent energy, a little vibe coming from his doctors who were just trying to drug him up more, and he didn't remember who he was, just total amnesia, and so he escaped from the hospital. This book actually started really strong, and then he meets up with people and discovers that, his relatives can travel through dimensions to this one central hub, this one real world, because all other worlds, other than a world called Amber, which is like this big city, and some surrounding lands and stuff, every world beyond Amber is just a shadow of Amber. So the world we live in, which this book starts off in, like the real modern world, is just like, a shadow, an echo of Amber. And almost knocked you over. This character and his family can just at will like travel through dimensions and go to the different shadows of Amber, and each shadow is basically any one element that reflects Amber can be changed slightly. So like the color of the grass, for instance, if that changes, you can just hop into a dimension where, the grass is blue. And any incremental change you can make to the real world, as they put it, has its own shadow. and there's even like shadow versions of the characters sort of implied in this book. So it's out there. It's pretty outlandish. Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time with the main character who has amnesia and who's trying to piece this together slowly before he even lets on to like some of his family members that, you know, he doesn't remember anything. But apparently he's in a conflict with the King of Amber, who's one of his brothers, and he kind of stumbles into like a usurpation plot where he wants to take over to be the King of Amber, and not much motivation was given as yet as far as why he'd want to do that, other than it seems like all of his siblings kind of have that goal, and it's just some siblings like each other more than others. You don't get a real sense that any of these are particularly good people, by the way they treat others. Like, towards the end of the book, the main character and one of his siblings is trying to raise an army to storm Amber and take over. So they go to like alternate dimensions where they find natives who will worship them as gods. Then they bring them back into the real world of Amber, and then they'll just sacrifice them by the hundreds of thousands, just throwing them as like meat shields against the forces of the enemy. And while you could sort of debate whether or not these shadow people exist, I am coming from the mindset of one of the shadow people. Like, we are not in Amber, and therefore we are one of these alternate dimensions. That's kind of a horrific thing to do. So it's interesting, and I like it, but I don't love it yet. The main character has proven resilient to almost any type of injury that he can recover through over time. And so, like, the stakes even seem kind of low, and the only limitation of these characters seem to be their imagination. So, I don't know. I still liked it, but I don't love it yet. A lot of it's just too ethereal for me to, like, firmly grasp what the stakes are. So, it's still a decent read, and I would recommend checking it out if you want something different in your fantasy. But I can't, like, give this a huge endorsement yet. But again, I only read 1 out of 10 books. So, and they're fairly short in and of themselves, like maybe like 120 pages or so. This edition had a few typos in it where like there were some paragraphs that repeated. I'm like, I can't tell if this was like a stylistic choice. So I grabbed my other volume where it has all 10 of these books in one volume, and it was just a typo. So, a review for, I guess, this particular edition, while it's more convenient to hold, it's has some issues. And then I am currently reading the Aeronaut's Windlass, which is something I talked about in my last video, a Jim Butcher book in the, oh my goodness, the Cinder Spires series. Sorry. I'm trying to get through that before I read the next book that just recently got released, I got from my library. It's good, but, like, I don't have anything to report on it yet until I get further in. But the real reason I haven't finished reading a whole lot this week is because I got a new toy, and that is an 11-inch tablet. Why on earth would you need an 11-inch tablet, you may ask? Well, it's because I wanted something to read comics on. For the longest time, I was reading comics on this old Kindle Fire. 7-inch screen, not really conducive. You have to do either like a view where you're just looking at it panel to panel, or you would have to like pinch and squeeze and like redirect everything. I liked reading digitally a lot, but I wanted something that was a little more close to like reading, a regular sized comic. And honestly, I have a few of these like omnibuses. Like, I don't like floppy comics. I don't want to ever collect them, like, in their single-issue form anymore. I did as a kid, and, like, they just all got destroyed. I do like trade paperbacks, and I also like the value of having an omnibus like this. This is the Golden Age Superman, volume 3, and the Silver Age Legion of Superheroes. Get a lot of, like, discounted DC omnibuses for some reason. But these things are heavy. Like, these are not comfortable to read. And when I'm reading, it's usually like comics. It's in the evening and I'm just trying to wind down. So I got a tablet to manage that. That was something a little more like of size. So what I've been reading lately are some Conan comics because I started getting into them and I really like them. And like the color doesn't come through well on this recording, but it's nice. This is just a cheap Android tablet. I didn't want to get anything fancy for just comic reading. But I read Conan number... What is it? I don't know what number you are, but I read The Devil Wings Over Shadowzar, which was a very enjoyable comic. The downside is you kind of get tipped off on all the covers of what the big secret or the big antagonist is going to be. So, you know, in this case, probably Giant Bat. My cat's going insane. You just noticed that? It's okay. Things will be okay. Sorry. Anyway, this was an enjoyable book, but the unfortunate thing, as a fan of the Lankmar series, is that Conan, early on in this comic, seemingly out of nowhere, fights like a pastiche of Fafnir and the Grey Mouser, and just utterly obliterates them, like, with barely an effort. And probably the shots were fired because Fritz Lieber said in like one of his openings of one of the books that he wrote that, you know, Fafnir and the Grey Mouse are just the best swordsmen ever of all sword and sorcery, and they beat all other characters. So this was just someone's retaliation to that, I think, where it's like Conan's like, these guys are nothing. So, you know, I'm a huge fan of Fafnir and the Grey Mouser, but it was still entertaining to watch. And I also read the next comic in that series, In the Coils of the Man Serpent. And this is more of a direct, what's the word? Pastiche of one of the not pastiche. It was a direct representation of one of the short stories where they added a little bit extra. And again, the cover kind of gives away the secret to the story. This story is actually really one of the really good short stories of Conan. If I had thought to think of the name, I don't think the name of the short story is In the Coils of the Man Serpent, because that kind of gets away the ending. But this is a words are hard for me today. But this is just a representation of one of the short stories where they give it a little extra introduction where Conan gets, you know, hired by this rich merchant lady, and she wants him to go steal the contents of whatever's in this bowl that has been donated to this person's like vault of artifacts. And Conan stumbles across the owner of that vault dead, and he is sort of accused of murder and is caught by one of the guards who holds him at crossbow point. And in the short story, like, you don't have any of the background. You just see Conan, he finds a body, and then he is like being charged with murder, and the city guard and a detective are basically kind of going through with him, and then things happen and they start disappearing, and suddenly Conan's fighting this horrible monster. It's a really good short story. The only like murder mystery in the Conan franchise, and it's just something's taken away in the comic version of this. Again, partially because they kind of show you on the cover what could possibly be the issue, but look, there's the dead body, and you know, all of a sudden one of the guards is found dying and like gibbering horribly. So, like, yeah, getting the background from the lead up to the story is, like, you know he's not there to kill the guy, and so you kind of know that, like, he's stumbling across this body legitimately. Where in the short story, if I remember correctly, like, it was just, you know, did Conan kill this guy? Probably not, but we don't know for sure. In this one, we kind of, you know, just know he didn't do it. So anyway, that was still a good comic, but like not amazing. And then for the rest of like this week, I've just been finishing off The Boys. which is by Garth Ennis, I think. I don't know why this cover is not coming up well, but yeah, I've just been finishing off The Boys, which was the inspiration for the Amazon show, obviously. I had about 3 volumes left to go, including the volume that was released a couple years ago called Dear Becky. It was a fine comic, but I think just a little overhyped for what it was. They have a lot of hyper-violence and sexual stuff just to grab your attention, and then they try to tell a cohesive story throughout. But honestly, a lot of this story is just people talking in grungy basements about, what really happened in history in the past in regarding to, like, corporations and how they've been handling superheroes, which were genetically created. And then you don't really get a whole lot that happens in the present. But, like, the superheroes are about to, like, unite and just take over the government, which is resolved super quickly and super bloodily, and just was kind of disappointing. So it was always meant to be kind of a trashy book, but it was just not that interesting at the end of the day, unfortunately. I had much higher hopes for it as the story was building, and then the writing just seemed to like just go up its own butt as far as its own lore, and just didn't provide like a interesting resolution. It was just like, and they all get killed, and that's that. So there were some good moments, and I don't want to just trash the book, but it wasn't necessarily for me. So anyway, that's all I've been reading. I'm probably going to read a whole lot more comics in the coming future. I was never really a comic guy growing up. It was mostly manga because those titles interested me more, and I had a harder time diving in. It hasn't been until like I started watching more BookTube lately that American comics have sort of had an allure. I think that was mainly to like Michael K. Vaughan being so into comics, and seeing Steve Donahue talk about comics and stuff, and then me just going to like dedicated comic YouTubers and just hearing them talk about it. Like, I want to get into this, but like it's so foreign to me because as a kid I was always like repulsed off of it because I couldn't go to the beginning and just work my way from there. Like the concept of a run didn't really make sense to me, where a run is like where you have a writer and an artist just like working together for like a span of a few issues, and usually those stories are like self-contained. That was just foreign material because like reading a manga, you just start at volume 1 and you go from there, and it's like the same artist and writer throughout the entire series. And then like the comics I did follow as a kid, for either like standalone stuff like the Archie comics, which you just you read whatever and there's no through line, or I read a lot of like the Archie comics brand, so like Sonic the Hedgehog I read as a kid, but like I started at issue 13 of that and then read all the back issues of that when I was a kid. So like I did start from the beginning to whenever I stopped reading, which was like in the 200s. So I just never felt like I had a good introduction to American comics. So now with the advent of the Epic collections, where they kind of collect and condense everything for like if you want to read about like the Fantastic Four, you don't just read the Fantastic Four comic, but like there's a bunch of other comics that they make appearance in. In the Epic collections, like they sort of like just put it all in one volume to make it easier for me to find. So I think I'm going to start reading through the Epic collections for the major characters and like getting a context for things. I think I would enjoy that more. I want to see everything from the beginning. So, and now that I have a convenient way to read it on a tablet, that's not going to break the bank. I'm not going to like be sort of gated out of reading a book that is no longer being printed, which is, I guess, kind of the case with the Epic collections too. They've been going for 10 years, and a company can't sustain just keeping all of them in print. But digitally, everything's easy to find. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the future, but I will sort of ramp up some of my Read What You Own reading. I still need to read a couple items for the Banned Books project that MJ is sort of encouraging us to read, 24 in 24, 24 banned books in the year 2024. Surprisingly easy to find banned books lying around my own bookshelves. So I need to read a couple of those for this month, and then we'll get into like the February stuff. But that's what I've been up to. Sorry I kept blathering on. I realize this has now gone on for about 20 minutes, so much for being a short one. But I will talk to you guys later. Thank you.